buying a big ticket item like property, do buyers really buy the first property they see? Stay tuned. We've got some awesome stories to share with you. Stay tuned.
Good morning.
How are ya?
I'm good. How you going?
Good. Is this true, Michael? Does this really happen? Do buyers come through and spend $500,000 or $1 million?
And the first one they've seen, first time in the marketplace, they walk through the first property, go, yep, this is the one, ready to buy. Here's the offer. Let's go. The short answer is most of the time, no. But yes, it does happen as well. We've had instances where it does happen.
And the buyer that's, so what are the differences between, so we were talking off air about a passive buyer and an active buyer in real estate. I think for people watching, sometimes it's hard to explain. I think for people watching, there's a certain type of buyer that you really want to hunt for with your marketing, your agent to hunt for. So I think understanding this psychology is super important. We're going to whip through it within a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So guys, just to lay, I guess, a bit of groundwork with it so we're all on the same page. In real estate, when we're looking at buyers, there's an active buyer and there's a passive buyer. So I'll go through active and I'll let Mark go through passive. An active buyer is someone that's there in the marketplace actively looking. So this is someone that has got their finance approval, knows that, okay, this is the rough type of property I'm looking to buy. Let's say it's a first home buyer wanting to buy a one-bedroom unit. They're on realestate.com every day. They're looking all over everyone's social media platforms. They're looking everywhere they can to find property. They're coming into the real estate agent's office to have a chat with them. They're coming through all your open homes, and they're very, very well in tune with the price as well. They know what next door sold for. Because of the internet these days, people have so much access to information. So the active buyer is someone that's out there in the marketplace. They've got all the information and they know what they're looking at. Very, very different to the passive buyer.
I think it's sort of like, if I can pre-package it this way. Have you ever gone to a Bunnings store to buy something and walked out with 5 items?
Yes.
So the active purchase was, I need screws. I need to buy some screws this size. And the passive purchase is, oh shit, that's really good, and I'll grab that. Oh my god, that's well priced. I'll grab that. So with property, the buyer that buys on that impulse isn't comparing dollar for dollar hard. They're not going to 30 or 40 open houses and looking for the one. The passive buyer is actually going, you know what, that suits our lifestyle, I'll buy that. Bang! They're straight in on it. The active buyer has been to 30 open houses, 40 open houses, out every weekend, 9 weekends in a row, ducks lined up. They're lining it up a bit harder than the passive. So the passive's powerful. The passive's real powerful. And I think convenience feeds the passive buyer. When you're open on a Sunday, when you're open on a Wednesday, when they see it in the corner of their eye on social media, when they get something in the letterbox, they think, shit, that suits. That's that sort of passive buyer that pays top dollar.
Correct. And that's the buyer as an agent, you got to work for. You got to work harder to find them. Because people, in terms of, as you guys know, with real estate agents, all the marketing that we all do, especially here at Novak, obviously very heavy on our social media marketing also. That, and the reason why we do it is not just because we like seeing our faces on the internet, but it's because it helps target these people that are out there that maybe aren't actively looking, yet they do transact real estate. Like Mark said, the amount of times we've sold property because someone said, hey, I was a neighbor in the street, came through an open home on a Sunday because they were just walking past, and they know someone that ends up buying the property, or they buy it themselves. or the letterbox drop, or someone that sees it pop up on their Facebook feed and goes, oh, what's that? I'm going to look into that further. And then that ends up being the perfect property and they buy it. The amount of times these have happened, countless. And the lovely thing for people that are out there selling is that's something you really want to tap into and harness, because off the whole topic of buying the first property, you say, are you serious? There are people out there that when they find that right property, even though they didn't know they were looking for it, they do make that jump, and it's that perfect match.
Look at Lisa. No, actually said she sold a $21.5 million property that way. Absolutely. They weren't even looking. They weren't even hunting, but it worked. Can I suggest something? It's pretty hard when you go to an IKEA store. This gives you an example of the psychology of buying. When you go to an IKEA store, they lead you around a garden path like this. So you walk into the store at one point and you walk out of that store at the last point, and at that time they can confidently say you've walked past every one of their products. That is a perfect example of tailoring a store to the passive buyer. So sure, the active buyer is going to be sucked in at the front door. Sure, the active buyer is going to get to where they want to go to, but they can't get there until they've walked past every single item in the store. Now, how many people have gone in for one or two things into an IKEA and walked out with 30? That is the power of understanding the psychology of that buyer. That buyer is as good, if not better, than the active buyer. I think better.
Yeah, I agree. And that comes down to also in real estate terms with an agent. And that's to give you an idea when cross-referring properties and selling properties, a good agent will always say, hey, you came through this property of ours. We've also got this one and this one that might suit you. You should come have a look at them as well. Take that buyer through. Because a lot of times, and people know this, and I know when I was a buyer as well, you think you know what you want, you don't really know what you want until you walk through it and go, ooh, I didn't think I'd like this, but I really, really do. And that's the whole.
I didn't think it existed. Sometimes you didn't even think that thing existed. It's like, what the hell? I didn't even know this was on the market or this was possible.
Correct. Or I didn't know this style of property would suit what I was looking for, or just a whole array of things. So that's why you got to keep an open mind with it. And also, good agents should be taking through its properties as well. But it's the psychology behind it, and that's the thing also with people buying the first property they see. We see sometimes people walk in, go, we're ready to go. They see a property, they like it. It's literally their first weekend looking, and they buy. And then we've seen other buyers, and Mark can attest this as well, that we've seen literally for years and years and years coming through open homes with us that have not bought one single property, yet they're still looking.
So, Michael, in summary, if you've just tuned in, we're talking about the active buyer and property, and we're talking about the passive buyer and property. If I was selling my place, how do I ensure I'm getting both of those? What advertising do I use? Which agent do I choose?
Yeah, so you want to choose an agent that covers all forms of marketing, not just realestate.com, not just domain, not just paper advertising, not just social media. You want someone that does a bit of everything. You want, and that's like Lisa said, their companies pay big money to market strategically. You want to hit all different avenues. You want to be on social media. You want to have the paper advertising in terms of letterbox drop. They do still work, by the way, guys. You do want to have realestate.com. You do want to have domain. You want to have all these different portals to ensure that you're not only hitting the active buyer, but like Mark said, the passive buyer as well, because that's where the real gold is.
And that's why I think sometimes, people think you typically go through a 4-week campaign, that, then you sell it, and that sort of works well. But sometimes you just get that person that's out of their mind, wants to buy it straight away. They're a passive type of buyer. Sometimes you get them a week or two after the auction. One thing I do have to say, the active buyer is attracted by most agencies. You whack it on realestate.com, you whack it on domain, do some photos, do a floor plan, you're there. That's what everyone's doing. Everyone's doing. And you know what? They're doing it sort of okay, or I'd even say pretty well. But the agent that is attracting that passive buyer, that's the secret sauce. That's what's going to make you the money. That's your insurance policy. That's your backup. So when you're searching for a real estate agent, make sure their active buyer campaign is strong. And that's pretty obvious what you want. You've seen it before. But that passive campaign, you've got to make sure that's bulletproof as well. And a perfect example I can give you is every agent does social media, but not every agent does it well. And that's that power of attracting the passive buyer. Signage out in property, lots of signage, letterbox drops, getting onto the phones and calling every buyer on the database and saying, I've just got something. You asked me to keep an eye out for you, and I've got something that comes up. SMS campaigns, but that animal social media is where it starts, and that doesn't mean putting it on Facebook and putting $50 behind it. That means you've got to have an account that's super active in your local community, and it's actually going to find that prospective purchaser out there in a passive manner.
Correct. The whole reason why you employ a sales agent is to sell your property. We're not marketeers for your property. We're here to sell the property. And that involves all those things that Mark just said. When you're on the phone telling people, hey, come and have a look at this. If it was that easy, then we wouldn't have a job. So there's an art behind it. You need to hit all those different avenues to have a successful campaign and get that locked up price.
And that art really is an art, mate. You're absolutely right. But thank you for coming on today, everyone. I hope we helped you a little bit on that psychology. It's happening under your nose everywhere you turn. So if you can master that with property, it'll make you more money when you're selling property.
That's it. Thank you, Mark.
See you, Michael. Cheers. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.